This video is brought to you by my wonderful members and Super Chat sponsors. Click the join button to become a member. Where do we go when we come unbound from this mortal coil? Do we depart to search the heavens for the answers we never thought we would find here on earth? Or do we stay firmly planted among the vestiges of our former, familiar lives? Listen to this story and let me know what you believe awaits each and every one of us when our time comes to an end. Dear Mr. X, my name is Asim. I have some true paranormal stories for your channel if you're interested. I work as an anesthesiologist in the UK. My colleagues and I are routinely assigned to the cardiac arrest code teams in the hospital I work for. Before I go on, I'll have to explain the layout of this hospital, because it's pretty non-standard. The main wing I usually work at is a relatively new building. However, it's attached to a much older hospital. That wing was constructed almost 150 years ago. The signs on the walls say it was built on the site of some sort of military fort, once used by the Roman army. The two buildings, the old hospital and the new, are connected by a long, flimsy link bridge on the 4th floor. There are only a few wards open in the old wing, but we do have to go there quite often. When a cardiac arrest call shows up on my pager, and it so happens that I'm in the newer building, I usually need to drop whatever I'm doing and head there ASAP. That means hightailing it a pretty long distance across the bridge. Now, I've come across some strange occurrences as a doctor working nights in this hospital, but the one I'm about to share with you shook me to my core. To be honest, it's made me question everything I thought I knew. One night, as I was working the late shift and received one of those dreaded cardiac arrest calls, it was about 4 a.m. This time, it was directing me to one of the wards in the old hospital, and I was in the new one. So I started to run that way and entered the link bridge that connects the two buildings. I didn't mention this before, but the bridge is a bit like those walkways that you use whenever you enter or exit an airplane at the airport. It's long and narrow, lending to a sense of mild claustrophobia. It feels a bit flimsy as well, almost unsafe when you first start using it. Making matters worse, it's about 50 meters off the ground. For some reason, they installed motion-activated lights along the bridge inside, making it seem more like a tunnel when you're walking through its over 150-meter length. At that late hour, around 4 a.m., it's nearly pitch black a few meters ahead of you as you're making your way through the bridge. Believe it or not, you do kind of get used to it, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit creepy, even on the best of days. As I ran through the bridge, the lights were coming on in front of me in segments of about 20 meters at a time. About halfway through, I nearly crapped my pants when a figure appeared under the lights that shut on ahead of me. I slowed down a bit to make sure I wouldn't plow right through him. It was a man. He looked like a patient with a gown and no shoes on. He appeared to be heading towards me, in the direction of the new hospital. As I looked him over, my pace now down to a brisk jog, I noticed how distinctive he was, especially for someone who was so out of it that he'd wandered over 75 meters down a bridge for no real reason. He sort of reminded me of Albert Einstein. Wild white hair, a big bushy mustache, and a gold medallion-style necklace that poked out from his extremely hairy chest and hospital gown. He also had a large, hairy mole on his left cheek. "Excuse me, sir. Can you help me?" he called out to me as I ran past him. I slowed down momentarily so I could answer him. "Yes, but I've got to be quick as I'm on my way to an emergency." "I was just wondering if you could tell me where the morgue is." As I wasn't 100% sure where the mortuary was in the new hospital, I said, "You'll have to ask somebody at the reception desk on the other side of the bridge. They'll be able to direct you." "Sorry, I've got to go." I carried on running without looking back. For a second, it briefly crossed my mind as to why a patient would be looking for the mortuary at this ridiculous hour. I didn't give it too much further thought, as I made my way to the ward where the cardiac arrest call had come from. When I arrived onto the ward, the nurses were directing me toward a particular bed space. They had already started performing CPR. When I got to the bed, my jaw dropped. Horror and disbelief suddenly clouded my thoughts. As you might have expected by now, the patient in cardiac arrest was the same man I crossed paths with on the link bridge. The same wild hair, bushy mustache, same mold on his left cheek. Not a look-alike, the exact same guy, down to the pink IV tube in his left hand. Anesthesiologists notice things like that. We administered CPR for 25 minutes, but we couldn't get him back. I believe I crossed paths with his spirit on the link bridge, and for some reason, it was looking for the mortuary. It still gives me the creeps whenever I have to cross it, especially at night. I have had some other milder paranormal encounters in the old hospital as well. I'll share those with you quickly. For example, there have been many cases where dying patients have all had the same hallucinations. I can elaborate on that with you in more detail later if you want. There's also a ghost called the matron, who's sometimes seen wearing an old-fashioned nurse's uniform and literally gliding around the hospital basement at night, like something straight out of Ghostbusters. I've never seen her myself, but I've heard the rumors. There have also been reports of old-fashioned music heard echoing through the abandoned parts of the hospital, areas with no power or even public access into them. I've personally seen a teaspoon stirring around an empty mug all by itself. In those same abandoned areas, old machines have been known to turn on randomly, despite not being plugged in. They even display vital signs of non-existent patients. Vital signs that need electrical activity from living bodies to even show up on a monitor. I've personally had sudden attacks of strange banging in the cardiac surgery operating rooms. And I mean loud, jarring, scare the crap out of me kinds of noises, banging on the door. This would happen late at night when nobody else was around. I know many patients have died on those operating tables. Those are all pretty disturbing in my opinion, but nothing I've seen has been as visceral and impactful as the mustache man. That particular moment has been thoroughly burned into my memory. Thanks for listening, Mr. X. Sincerely, Asim. Alright, my friends, I'll get into my thoughts, and then we will check out what the dreamers listening to the live show have to say. I thought it was strange that this individual would be looking for the morgue after he's died. It's almost like he knows he's dead, and he knows that when you die, you go to the morgue, but it's your body that goes to the morgue. Very interesting that that would be the first thing on his mind when he's not even completely aware of what's happened. I would imagine that some people would have better things to do with their astral form. I wonder if maybe the fact that he still had the same exact image of his living form, complete with IV tubes and all that, all these useless items to a spirit entity, maybe that means that this man was still deeply attached to the rules and regulations of life. I could imagine being inside his head for a moment, thinking, okay, I'm dead. Now, when you die, you go to the morgue. When you die, you go to the morgue. Gotta find the morgue. Gotta find the morgue. Repeating in his head almost like a mantra. I once heard an old Jewish proverb that spoke about different ways people can die. Well, and really not in the way you might think. It was something to the effect of this. When one dies with a deep attachment to the world, their soul's exit is like trying to remove a ball of wool from a thicket of thorns. As you would imagine, that would be very difficult and painful, and you would be trying to rip that wool out from the thorns, but there would be clumps and pieces of wool stuck in the bush still, and that's not really the most effective or pleasant way to deal with that. Now, when someone dies and they're at peace, they're ready to move on. Their transition is like removing an eyelash from a saucer of milk. If you can picture that, it's just, you just gently coax the eyelash over to the side of the bowl, and then you use a finger to gently pick it up and slide it out. And then it's done, it's gone. And the milk is perfectly still there by itself, not mixed with any craziness. It's not turbulent. You leave it peacefully. And the hair itself, the eyelash, is also pretty clean of milk and able to just go on and be an eyelash by itself and do whatever eyelashes do in the wild. It's a really weird saying now that I think about it. And I know that that's not exactly how the proverb goes, but that was sort of the message it left me with. In any case, there are different ways, different modes of transportation on your way out from this life. And whether there's something afterwards or not, some people, I'm thinking about my mother right now, some people leave in peace and contentment and without fighting, and some people leave with resentment and fear. And though I would like to be, I personally would like to be the former, someone who goes peacefully and calmly into that good night, as they say. I'd like to hope that I don't end up raging against it. Just doesn't seem like a good thing to do, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily know that I believe in the concept of individual souls, but I do wonder if perhaps the imprint we leave behind on the collective consciousness of humans may take on the remnants of our living will, perhaps even for many years down the road, like in some cases where you see after images or apparitions or dreams or even waking world sounds and sights of things that happened in lives past. This is one of the most fascinating things to ponder, in my opinion, because it's real and it affects us all, and we all are going to learn at some point which way the pendulum swings in that regard. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you dreamers have to say on the subject. You know I love these discussions. So my friend, what do you think about the story? What do you think could cause someone to stay behind with their exact image immediately after death? Why do you think the ghost was looking for the morgue? And how would you have reacted if you were in the shoes of Dr. Asim that day in this story? Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. And now it's time for the dreamers listening live to weigh in. Remember, if you want a chance at your question or comment showing up in a future video, or the chance to sponsor a video with a super chat, turn on notifications so you can catch the live reading and discussion. So, Sunny Gabe says, my feeling tells me it was the patient's shadow. A shadow person detaches itself when such a departure happens. That's an interesting idea. If it was a shadow, I would imagine it would be pretty much an exact copy of the person whose shadow it is. But to me, it doesn't really explain. A shadow seems more of a passive phenomenon than something that would be able to walk around and consciously look for something, look for the location where it belongs or what it's supposed to be doing. Interesting idea though. Sleepy says maybe he was wanting to get to the spiritual world and was just trying to get it going faster. Die, morgue, you pass loved ones, meet you at the gate, and so on. Another interesting idea. Maybe he just really did think that that's how you do it. That's where you're supposed to go, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. Hey, I'm sure he was wondering where the long tunnel was. Hey, whoa, hang on a second. Think about it. When people die, a lot of people expect to see a long tunnel with a light at the end of it. So when he died, he found the bridge that goes back to the other hospital. That was his long tunnel. And what if the light at the end of that tunnel was the light from Asim walking from the other end where the lights come on automatically? Maybe he was just going towards there thinking he was going towards, the light at the end of the tunnel. That really led me down a little rabbit hole there, but I love it. Very, very interesting. Cindy S. said, I do hair and geriatrics counseling in nursing homes. I had a similar thing happen to me. It'll make your heart skip a beat to find out you've had a conversation with a dead guy. And I bet. You're going to have to elaborate on that for us, Cindy, if you haven't already and I just missed it in the comments there. Please do hook it up and let us know what that conversation with the dead guy was like for you. Samantha said, we had automatic doors that would continually open at our hospital in the middle of the night, with no one there. We would see it in all kinds of other odd things on the security cameras. I assume you mean like glitches and weird shapes and shadows and stuff like that. That's got to be pretty creepy. Mary C says, that's sad he was ready to just head to the morgue at that point. He probably couldn't handle looking at people trying to save his body anymore. Damn, that's really a really sad thought. Yeah, the people were already doing CPR, and he was probably just watching that and said, you know what, forget this. I'm going towards the light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel's right around the corner. I saw it on the way here. That's deep and sad. Thank you for making me sad, Mary C. I appreciate that. No, I'm just messing with you. Samantha also said, the idea that he's trying to go where he thinks he should, maybe he was looking for his body projected away from it. That's an interesting idea. What if he was actually ejected from the body? Something that happened to him. Maybe he was going through the cardiac event and it just violently pulled him away. And maybe he was just looking for, he probably figured that that's where my body was going to go because I'm probably dead by now. Maybe he just wanted to go see his body one last time and say goodbye. And by the way, Mary, I was just joking. I'm not really that sad. It is a sad sight to picture in my mind, but nothing I can't handle, so don't worry. Mary's apologizing in the chat right now. It's all good, Mary. Antonio says, I've always wondered why in these types of stories where people are dying or recently dead and someone happens to run into their spirit, why would the spirit still have clothes or possessions? That's, someone mentioned something like in the movie The Matrix, where they have a residual self-image, also known as RSI in some circles. If that's the way you think you're supposed to look, perhaps your mind makes it real, even so far as that it can be seen by another person who's totally external from you. Yeah, very interesting idea, and I really wonder about that, because it's very rare for someone to report seeing an apparition or a ghost of a person who's just naked, unless maybe the person died while they were in the bathtub or something. Yeah, now I'm thinking about Dr. Sleep and The Shining. Well, that was quite a ride, and I enjoyed every second of it. I hope you enjoyed the stories as well, and the commentary most of all. I'm going to bring this story to an end, but before I do, I'm going to look for a code word with the dreamers listening live. Let's see what they've got to say about that. See what we come up with. I'll be right back. So, Dreamer and a new member, Samantha, chose Einstein. Fantastic code word for tonight. So listen, if you're still with me right now, type the word Einstein into your comment down below so I can see you. Take care, my friend. Later. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to like and share. If you made it to the very end, you're exactly the kind of subscriber I'm looking for. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. That way, you can catch the live show and discuss the stories with me. Your input might even appear in my next video. Last thing, if you heard a code word after the story, type it in a comment down below so I know who the real dreamers are. Take care, my friend. Until next time.